Welcome to Book Nibbles, big ideas, small bites. One of the hardest things about being human is our deep craving for control. We want people to behave in ways that feel good to us. We want our family to understand our choices, our friends to match our energy, our coworkers to respect our boundaries, and even strangers to drive the way we wish they would. It's exhausting, and most of us don't even realize how much of our lives we spend fighting against what other people are doing. That's where Mel Robbins comes in with this deceptively simple but life shifting idea she calls the let them theory. And at first, it sounds almost too simple. Someone doesn't invite you to the dinner? Let them. Your friends go out without you? Let them. Your spouse doesn't want to join you in a new activity? Let them. It's a phrase that seems passive, but in practice, it's radical. It's a way of reclaiming your energy, your peace of mind, and your ability to live authentically without being drained by the constant tug of war of trying to make others change. Mel shares that she stumbled into this realization almost like a light bulb moment. She had been caught up, like so many of us, in those tiny spirals of frustration, wanting people to behave differently. A friend doesn't return your call, a colleague makes a choice you don't like, a kid doesn't react the way you hoped, and her instinct, like ours, was to resist, to push back, to stew in disappointment. But then she tried saying to herself, let them. Let them do what they're doing. And suddenly there was a release. It's like unclenching your fist that you didn't realize was balled up all day. Now, it's important to understand this isn't about apathy. It's not about letting people walk all over you or refusing to have boundaries. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about creating space so that your boundaries become clearer. Because when you stop trying to control others, you start noticing what you actually want, what feels good for you, and where your energy is best spent. Mel calls it a psychological trick that immediately changes your relationship to other people's choices. Think about a relatable example. Imagine you're in a group of friends and everyone's planning a weekend trip. You've been looking forward to it, you've imagined how it'll go, and then you find out they've made decisions without you. They picked a place that you don't really like, or maybe they didn't even invite you this time. Most of us would spiral. Why didn't they include me? Did I do something wrong? Should I confront them? Should I withdraw? That inner storm takes over. The let them theory says pause, breathe, and instead of trying to chase or fix, just say, let them. Let them choose the trip they want. Let them go without me. What happens is that you stop fighting reality, and in that space, you notice your own truth. Maybe you don't even like those kinds of trips. Maybe you've outgrown this group. Maybe you'd rather spend that weekend on something that lights you up. By letting them, you also let yourself. There's this subtle but powerful shift. When you let people be who they are, their actions become information instead of betrayal. If someone repeatedly excludes you, that's information about your relationship. If a partner never joins you in your passions, that's information about compatibility. If your coworker cuts corners, that's information about how they operate. The let them theory doesn't erase disappointment, but it prevents you from wasting months or years trying to mold people into shapes they don't want to take. Mel Robbins emphasizes that this little phrase is like a pressure valve for your emotions. It interrupts the spiral and gives you perspective. Picture this. You're at a family gathering and one relative starts ranting about politics, trying to bait you into an argument. Normally, you'd feel that rising urge to defend yourself, to correct them, to prove your point. But if you whisper to yourself, let them, suddenly you don't need to engage. Let them rant. That's who they are. That's what they're choosing. You don't have to join their storm. You get to keep your peace. And here's where it gets really interesting. The let them theory not only lowers your stress, it also reveals who belongs in your life. Because once you stop chasing people, the ones who genuinely want to be there show up. Mel shares how liberating it is to watch what happens when you release the grip. The right people lean in, the wrong people drift away, and instead of constantly managing relationships, you start experiencing them. Let's put it in a more intimate example. Dating. Imagine you're texting someone new and they're inconsistent. They respond when they want, they flake on plans, and you feel that urge to decode, to strategize, to analyze every little message. Instead, apply the let them theory. They didn't text back? Let them. They canceled? Let them. What happens is clarity. They're showing you who they are. You don't need to audition or manipulate. You get your answer faster and you save yourself months of overthinking. Another highlight Mel points out is how this principle applies to parenting. As a mom, she admits it's hard to let your kids make their own choices. You want them to avoid mistakes, to be safe, to follow your advice. But the truth is, kids need to bump into life. They need to try, fail, recover, and learn. So, the let them theory becomes a mantra. Your teen wants to wear something ridiculous to school? Let them. Your child wants to try a sport you don't understand? Let them. That doesn't mean you don't guide or support, but you stop trying to micromanage every decision. You allow them to build resilience, and you release yourself from the impossible task of controlling another human's path. And think about the workplace. We all know how draining it is when colleagues don't pull their weight, or when leadership makes choices that frustrate us. The instinct is to rage against it, to complain endlessly, to fantasize about how things should be. The let them theory says, let them. Let your colleague operate the way they do. You, meanwhile, get clear on what you can control, your work, your attitude, your choices. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse or unethical behavior, but it means you stop wasting emotional bandwidth on things outside your control. And ironically, once you stop wrestling with what other people should be doing, you become more effective, more grounded, and sometimes even more respected. Mel Robbins weaves in the neuroscience here too. She talks about how our brains are wired with a negativity bias. We fixate on threats, slights, and unmet expectations. When you practice saying, let them, you're rewiring that loop. You're interrupting the automatic reaction that says, I must fix this. Instead, you create space, and that space allows your prefrontal cortex, the rational, calm part of your brain, to take over. It's like moving from clenched reactivity into grounded clarity. One of my favorite aspects of Mel's approach is how universal it is. You can use it in traffic. Someone cuts you off, let them. You can use it in social media. Someone posts something obnoxious, let them. You can use it in friendships. Someone always shows up late, let them. And what's wild is that the more you practice, the more peace you feel. Not because the world changes, but because your grip loosens. You start to realize people are going to do what they're going to do. My job is not to control them. My job is to choose how I respond, where I invest my energy, and what I make it mean. And there's another layer here. When you let people be who they are, you also give them freedom to show up authentically. You stop pressuring them to conform to your expectations. And sometimes that's exactly what makes relationships healthier. Instead of silently resenting your friend for not calling enough, you let them be the type of friend who shows up occasionally but lovingly. Instead of expecting your partner to like every hobby you do, you let them opt out and you find joy in doing something solo. In other words, letting them also lets you. Mel Robbins loves to ground this theory in the personal stories, and she's candid about her own struggles with control. She admits that she used to spend so much time fretting over what others thought of her or why people didn't behave the way she wanted, and when she started practicing let them, her stress dropped dramatically. She describes moments where she was tempted to chase someone's approval, to demand fairness, to stew in anger, and then she whispered those two words, let them. And it was like unlocking a hidden door to calm. Of course, this doesn't mean you never take action. If someone is toxic or harmful, letting them doesn't mean tolerating them forever. It means you stop trying to change them and start making your own decision. If they're showing you who they are, believe them, let them, and then decide whether that aligns with the life you want. In this way, the theory isn't passive at all. It's profoundly empowering. And here's the paradox. The more you let go, the more control you actually feel. Not over others, but over yourself. You gain control of your reactions, your focus, your choices, And that's where real power lives. You can't dictate what other people do, but you can decide whether to waste your energy on it or redirect it toward the life you're building. Mel often describes how this theory spreads like wildfire once you share it. People start applying it in little ways at dinner tables, in text threads, in boardrooms, and suddenly they feel lighter. One listener shared how she stopped obsessing over why her sister never reciprocated in their relationship. She let her, and in that letting, she stopped feeling rejected. Another shared how she stopped fighting her partner's tendency to watch TV instead of joining her in workouts. She let him, and then she realized she actually loved having that solo workout time for herself. The examples are endless, and they all point to the same truth. Peace comes from release. So next time you feel that familiar squeeze of frustration, someone didn't invite you, someone didn't thank you, someone didn't behave how you hoped, pause and try it. Whisper those two words. Let them. Let them be who they are. Let life unfold the way it's unfolding and watch what happens when you stop clenching. Chances are you'll discover that the space you free up is exactly what you need to create the life you actually want. And that's it. Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. Thanks for listening to Book Nibbles. If you enjoyed this bite-sized book, don't forget to subscribe for more quick, insightful summaries. See you in the next nibble.